What's going on, guys? Switch TV here. Welcome back to the Dreadmyst tutorial series. This is episode 3. In the previous videos, we broke down gear, stats, attributes, and most importantly, the math behind how all of it actually works. If you guys haven't seen that video yet, I'll actually put it on the top right of the screen, so you can check it out later. Today, we're taking all that information and applying it directly to each class. This video is going to focus on class-specific stat priorities and affixes, based on everything we've already covered. We'll be going over the Ranger class, Mage, Cleric Healer, Cleric Hybrid, Paladin Hybrid, and I'll be showcasing diagrams for all the affixes. For each class, we'll go over the stat priorities and then break down preferred affixes. Some classes like Ranger and Mage won't change much. The big additions here are Hybrid Cleric as a damage option and Hybrid Paladin as a more meta-adapted build. Before we jump into individual classes, let's quickly go over affixes as a whole, because this applies to everyone. On screen, you'll see a full Affix Breakdown. The 25 to 25 affixes are preferred. They give you the most efficient return per slot. You can also alternatively use the 20 to 25 affixes. They're just not going to be as good. The goal with every build today is to prioritize 25 affixes and tailor which stats those affixes give based on class role. Let's start with Ranger. Ranger is one of the most straightforward classes in Dreadmyst. They have flat damage on their weapon, and range value scales that as well. It's important to note that Rangers don't have scaling on their skills like typical classes do. Everything scales off of AD, so any percentages that you see on the skills is based on flat AD. The only exception to this is actually the Ethereal Sting, and that scales off of Int and Courage. There are 3 primary ways to obtain AD. First way is on the weapon, like we previously spoke about. The second is getting ranged weapon value rolls on gear. Last but not least is Agility. They gain 0.5 damage per agility, so that makes agility the primary stat for Ranger. The next 2 stats are about equal. It depends on what you want to prioritize. Strength or Courage. Strength gives you more melee damage and also gives you dagger skills. Courage gives you more resistances. It's also worth mentioning that Ethereal Sting scales off of Courage at 0.5 ratio. Finally, Intelligence. Intelligence scales our Ethereal Sting at a 1.5 scaling. I wouldn't invest heavily into the stat because it's not worth the scaling. In my class guide, we put a little bit of points into Willpower and Intelligence, and that's solely to scale up the Fortitude buff. If you're very geared, it's not required. You'll hit 400 Fortitude, no problem. Finally, Willpower doesn't do anything important for us. If you want more of a leveling guide for stat allocation as you level and what skills to level, check out my video. I have a full class guide. The Ranger class hasn't been changed at all. I'm still using the same build and it's definitely viable. So go ahead and go check it out. I'll put the link in the top right. Next up is affixes. I've categorized these into prefix, triple stat, and suffix. Prefix is going to be the first affix that you're going to see on gear. Triple stat will also be a prefix. I separated those to showcase that you'll have to match each one of those triple stats to a different suffix. You can't have 2 the same. For instance, Masterful Gorilla is not possible. You can't have Agility, so you have to match accordingly. For the first affix, I'd prioritize range skill if you don't have 500 range skill already from attributes. If you do, I'd focus on ranged weapon value. Triple stats are really powerful as well because, like we talked about before, agility, strength, and courage give range skill, range crit, melee crit, and melee skill. And once again, we want to prioritize a level 25 because they're more efficient. Next up is Mage. Similar to Ranger, we didn't change much here. Mage scaling is already very efficient when built correctly, and the build just works. You want to see the exact stats you should be putting into as you level and what skills to prioritize. I'll put the link in the top right for the full class guide. For Mage stat priorities, the first one that we want to prioritize is Intelligence. Intelligence scales our spell damage the most. It also gives us 3 resistances, 3 meditate, and 3 spell crit. This will be our primary stat, and we want to stack it as much as possible. The second stat that I want to talk about might be a little bit controversial. It's usually a debate between willpower or courage. I personally believe willpower is better. I've talked with some top mages like Waving Owl and Vile, and they mutually agree that willpower is a better stat. And the reason for that is Vim of Wisdom. 1 willpower is 0.5 int scaling, so that's the buff that you get. With intelligence being our number 1 stat, you gain a lot of value from willpower. On top of that, willpower also gives 5 flat damage, so it's a lesser scaling coefficient than intelligence, but it's still very valuable. It also gives +3 meditate, +3 resistances, and +3 spell crit. Finally, the last stat that we want to prioritize is Courage. Courage per 10 gives spell damage, 5 flat damage for fire, and it also gives 3 spell crit and 3 resistances. Next up is affixes. Affix wise, Mage wants spell related bonuses, intelligence focus rolls, willpower focus rolls, rolls, and also courage. If you've been playing the game recently, you probably heard the term being thrown around tri-stat. What that really means is it's a single affix stat combined with a dual affix stat. So as you can see on the screen, if you had unyielding, which is the 25-25 willpower, you could combine that with squid, which is intelligence and courage. You don't have to use that exact combination. The only thing you have to note is you can't have two of the same stat in a roll. So you wouldn't be able to have unyielding, which is willpower, with say horse, which is also willpower and courage. You also want to try to prioritize the 25-25s. These inherently have better stat scaling. So unyielding is really good for willpower, heroic for courage, transcendent for intelligence, dolphin for willpower intelligence, horse for willpower courage, and squid for intelligence courage. The next class I want to go over is the healer cleric. So this is the same build that I had in my previous video from the full class guide. I'm not going to go over it in detail. We have all the stats that are going to be the same and the skill priority is going to be the same from that video. If you haven't already checked that out, and you're a new cleric looking to level up, or if you just want to copy the same build that Minkoi is using, I'll go ahead and link the video on the top right of the screen. This build is mostly going to be focused on group healing. I know, shocker by the name, Cleric Healer. With that being in mind, the stat and affix priority are going to be optimized for survivability and healing output. The top priority stat is going to be willpower. This scales healing, gives 6 meditate, 3 resistances. Healing scales off of will and int, but blessed shield solely scales off of will, and this is going to be your main survivability. A lot of times in group dungeons, you're not healing yourself. You have to heal other people, so scaling the shield with will is going to help you stay alive. Will is also your primary scaling for healing. The next stat we're going to talk about is intelligence. Intelligence scales healing, gives 3 spell crit, 3 resistances, and 3 meditate per 10. If you want to increase your healing, you want to increase your intelligence. Plague and Holy Bolt primarily scale off of intelligence. Next up is courage. Courage per 10 gives +3 resistances, +3 melee crit, +3 weapon skill, +3 shield, and +3 spell crit. Both Holy Bolt and Smite both have a minor scaling off of courage as well. Strength and agility are useless for healer cleric. There is a world where you could put a few points into it. It is pretty XP efficient if you don't have very many points into it, but if you're already at 400 fortitude just from your normal stats, I wouldn't invest into it. Next up is affixes. On the left side we have bountiful, abundant, those are both health and mana, reliant and protective, armor value, volcanic, scorching for fire resist, and on the right side we have unyielding and unrelenting, which are willpower, heroic and brave, which are courage, and transcendent and intuitive, which is intelligence. On the bottom you can see where it says second affix. These are going to be the suffix, so you're going to combine them with the first affix. It's important to note that you can't have two of the same stat. Every single stat has to be unique. An example of this, unyielding is willpower, so we wouldn't be able to have dolphin because that also has willpower int. We would have to pick something that doesn't have willpower in it, or alternatively we would have another first prefix, the first affix. The next build that I want to talk about is Hybrid Cleric by HFX. I got this build from him. He was nice enough to share it, so shout out to him. I have a spreadsheet that's pinned in the description if you'd like to check it out. I'm attaching this build because I know that we had a lot of comments on my full class guide that wanted an alternative to healer cleric, so here it is. The primary focus of this build is going to still be healing with the ability to still do damage. This build is very capable. HFX sold the world boss Minotaur at 5.5k combat rating with this build. You have enough damage at 6.1k combat rating to do undercourse in 10 minutes. The stat priority from top to bottom for Hybrid Cleric is going to be willpower. It gives plus spell damage for smite, and it's your primary healing scaler. It gives 6 meditate, 3 resistances, and +3 spell crit. Next up is intelligence. It gives plus spell damage for Holy Bolt and Plague. It also scales healing at a lesser rate than willpower. It gives +3 spell crit and +3 meditate. Courage also increases spell damage for smite and Holy Bolt. It gives +3 resistances, +3 melee crit, and +3 shield skill. Strength is a lower priority for this build, but it gives +3 melee crit, +6 shield skill, and agility is useless for this build. The stats on gear that you're looking for is block. If you prefer more damage, just build more crit. This build wants a lot of melee crit for low cooldown buttons for damage. Spell cooldowns are long. A good goal to hit is 700 blocks, so if you're shy of that, you can try to look for the affixes with guarding or protecting. For the first affixes for Hybrid Cleric, we're going to be looking at block, resist fire, willpower, courage, and intelligence. You can play around with these depending on what you need. Resist fire is also another good attribute. It'll help against the end game bosses, and it'll also help against mages. Another route that you can go for is the tried and true try stat. If you can get any combination of willpower, courage, or intelligence as your first affix, you can link that together with one of the second affixes as long as it doesn't have overlap. For an example, if you have unyielding, which is willpower, you can't have dolphin because that also has willpower. It has to be unique. The core fundamentals of this build is about having stat efficiency. For 30k XP, we can get 300 melee crit, 150 spell crit, and 200 fire resistances. On the screen is a condensed stat and skills for the hybrid cleric. This is a class overview for max level, so you can see the allocated points and how much the total costs highlighted in the middle of the screen. 494,773 XP spent, but pretty much the full 500k with a little bit of a buffer. So his level 25 build has 1213 health, 763 mana, 70 strength, 125 willpower, 105 intelligence, 105 courage, 48 shields, bartering 100, lockpicking 100, melee critical 300, spell critical 150, and then you can see the skills on the right side. So he runs rejuvenation, blessing of health, spark of light, greater heal, bless shield, satanic madness duration, holy bolt, harrowing strike, plague, smite melee, smite spell, and the auto attack. All those are max level. The next class we're going to talk about is Paladin. After consulting my two friends that played Paladin, since releasing my full class guide, the meta's changed a little bit. This build is a little bit more optimized. Shout out to Apophis for this build and letting me showcase it. I provided a link in the description to his spreadsheet if you'd like to take a look. Let's hop into it. The stat priority for Paladins is going to be strength and courage. Just enough agility to use gear, and willpower for cheap stats. Strength is going to be your main damage stat. It gives +5 melee damage per 10, +6 regen, +3 melee crit, and +3 weapon skill. Strength also scales Mighty Blow, Hammer of Might, and Shield Block. Courage is going to be our second stat. That's going to be equally as important as strength. It's going to give us +3 resistances per 10, +3 melee crit, +3 weapon skill, and +6 shield. Courage also is a good scaler for our abilities. It scales Holy Wrath, Radiance, Mighty Blow, and Hammer of Might. Agility is going to be primarily used for the gear requirements, but it also gives +3 shield, +3 melee crit, +3 weapon skill, and +3 regen. On the screen, there's a brief summary of what to prioritize while leveling. You want to buy a vendor weapon about every 3 levels. This will help you keep up in damage so you can level efficiently. Early on, you want to be trying to stack as much armor value as possible. Aim for 200 plus armor value, which will make the 25 grind significantly easier. Also be on the lookout in roll chat for vendor blues. You can actually get a lot of BIS blue items with good stats for fairly cheap, 10 to 15k. Early on in your levels 1 through 10, you want to pump strength and courage 1-to-1 ratio. After investing into strength and courage, you want to level up weapon skill and melee crit for more damage. Allocate leftover points into HP and mana for survivability. Level Radiance to 5, level Divine Strike to 5, and put Aegean as needed for gear requirements. Once you're reaching mid-game, levels 11 through 20, continue to prioritize strength and courage at a 1-to-1 ratio. Level up your weapon skill to 50, add to melee crit to 400, and start adding points into int to make your heals better and wrath hit harder. Aim for 100. Once you hit level 25, this is the bare minimum stats that you want to look at. Apophis also provided recommended ranges on the right column, so you can take a look at those and stat accordingly to your playstyle. This is the build sheet for a fresh level 25. These stats are how much you're allocating or spending on your build. This is not considering gear, this is just the spent stats. These are all the recommended affixes for hybrid paladin. There's a lot of combinations you can play with, and it really depends on what your prioritizations are. If you want to improve survivability, you can increase block rating and dodge rating. If you're under geared or a fresh 25, prefer weapon values so you can have a higher chance of hitting and not getting parried. You can also look to add melee crit rating if you want to do more damage. This video took multiple days in consulting the class experts to make sure that I could provide you guys accurate and good data. If you guys like the content, please subscribe, like, and comment on it. It helps me out a lot. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.